Hi, I'm happy to welcome you to our YouTube channel. The topic for today's discussion is EB-5 Escrow bank account. I'm hosting this video together with Nick Bernagoria, who is Senior Vice President of a regional center that has already returned more than $2 billion to their investors. Nick, thank you so much for finding time for this recording.
Thank you very much for asking us to join, Barbara. It's always a pleasure working with you.
To start with, let's quickly go through the typical project structure in your regional center projects.
Absolutely. So at Can-Am, we use a limited partnership model. For every single project that we structure, we will form a new limited partnership. That's the new commercial enterprise. We act as the general partner of that partnership, of that new commercial enterprise, and our EB-5 investors are the limited partners. And then the partnership is acting like a bank, providing a loan to a project or to a job-creating enterprise. So our EB-5 investors are equity investors in our partnership, and then the partnership is providing a loan or a debt investment to a project, the job-creating enterprise.
Thanks. Now moving on to the topic of today's video, where does a Escrow bank account fits into this structure?
Absolutely. So first, when our clients invest with us, we are never in physical possession of their funds. Their funds first are wired to a third-party escrow bank, also known as an escrow agent. And what an escrow agent is a neutral third party that holds funds and securities and other assets for two parties involved in a transaction. And they hold those funds until the transaction is complete or a contract is fulfilled. The escrow agent manages the account and only releases assets when certain conditions are met, such as receiving instructions or fulfilling contractual obligations. In the context of EB-5, a common condition Can-Am requires before investors' funds can be released from escrow to a project or from an NCE to the JCE is proof that the investor's I-526E petition has been filed.
So this escrow bank account belongs to the NCE, and funds from this escrow bank account going where? To NCE or to JCE, job creating entity, the project itself?
So actually, the escrow bank is not owned by the regional center. It's an independent third party that we structure a relationship with. And
but the bank account is owned by NCE, right?
Well, yes, the bank account is held by the NCE. So the funds are wired to the escrow bank in an account that is held by the NCE. And when certain conditions are met, the funds are released from the NCE escrow account to the JCE. And they must be released only when the specific conditions are met, which in our case is typically proof that the I-526E petition has been filed. And we need to have requests from the JCE to use those funds on very specific job creating activity. So they can only use the money on very specific job creating activity, which is identified in our business plan.
So if you're looking at the different projects, make sure you do check these release conditions in the escrow bank account. They differ from regional center to regional center and from project to project. So pay extra attention on this moment as well. Nick, and why actually regional center came up with the structure of using the escrow bank account in their chain of transaction?
So this is not necessarily specific to EB-5 regional centers. You know, escrow accounts are widely used for various types of real estate transactions. They provide a secure and impartial way to protect both the lender and the borrower during a transaction. It's very, very common. And they do that by not releasing the funds until all conditions have been met. So this can really help prevent fraud, mismanagement, and other problems that can arise. The same process applies for, again, all types of real estate transaction, including buying a home.
And how long are EB-5 funds typically held in the escrow account?
So there are a variety of factors that can impact how long funds can remain in escrow. One is certainly how long it may take the regional center to complete raising funds for a specific project. In many cases, regional centers may not begin their formal loan term and release funds to a project borrower until they have raised a minimum amount of funds. And this can vary drastically by the size of the raise, how successful and how quickly or slowly a regional center takes to complete the fundraise. For individual family, it can also depend on if you are an early investor in a project or a later investor in a project. It is not uncommon for an early investor in a project, for example, to have funds remain in escrow for several months or longer. And on the other end of the spectrum, it is not uncommon for a late investor in a project to have their funds remain in escrow only for a few days or even weeks. On average, though, I think expecting your funds to remain in escrow for at least a few months is most common.
And it
But
also
but certainly do speak with your regional center about the expected drawdown schedule and the conditions.
And it's also important that you have to file your I-5 to 6 petition. It's like one of the most common conditions in the escrow bank agreement. And for this, you have to make sure that you prepared all your documentation with your immigration attorney before you're investing in the EB-5 project. Otherwise, it would take for a while to get these papers ready while you already invested the funds.
No, absolutely. In fact, we don't even want a single penny of an investor's funds until their attorney has signed off on their source of funds documentation. So we are not rushing people to sign documents and wire right away. It's actually the opposite. We don't want you wiring any funds until you've completed your source of funds work.
And what happens if the bank holding the escrow funds goes bankrupt?
Technically speaking, there is risk to investors if their funds are held at a bank account that goes bankrupt. In the United States, the federal limit for insurance coverage is $250,000. And we did see stress in the US banking system in 2023, and even some failures. Fortunately, in that case, the federal government did step in and protect depositors beyond the $250,000 limit, but you cannot rely on that. To protect our clients at Can-Am, we are actually part of a program that separates investors' funds across a portfolio of banks so that no more than $250,000 of any investor's funds are at a single institution while they remain in escrow. So while they're in escrow, they remain 100% FDIC insured.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to protect investors, and it shows that your regional centers does take time and energy to find these solutions.
No, absolutely. We, took that situation very, very seriously and, wanted to find a good solution to protect our clients.
The funds are not going to the project before investor files his I-5 to 6 petition. What if an investor changed his mind while money is still in the escrow bank account? Can they get their funds back?
Most cases, absolutely yes. If funds have not yet been released from escrow to the project, it is much easier to return the capital back to the investor. But generally speaking, independent of whether the funds are in escrow or not, I tell all investors that you should not think of EB-5 as a liquid option. And generally speaking, I do not recommend wiring any funds unless you are comfortable with your capital being locked for the full loan term of a project. And we get these questions often, very commonly from investors that may have other permanent green card applications pending, such as an EB-2, for example. Generally speaking, yes, we do have terms for the early repayment of an investor's capital under certain conditions, and we will always make good faith efforts to replace investors when possible. But as a general rule of thumb, I would not consider an EB-5 investment a liquid investment that is easily redeemable before maturity.
Nick, do you have anything to add on escrow bank account here?
No, I think we've covered all we have to say on that for today, but happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Great. I don't have any questions, but if any of our listeners do have questions, please ask them in the comments below and we will be happy to answer them. I hope this was interesting for our listeners. And this video was hosted by Second Wind EB-5, third-party promoter working outside of the US. Our goal is to provide the best choice of the EB-5 projects from regional centers with proven track records. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Barbara.
And if you guys like this video, please click the like button and subscribe. See you in the next one.